What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of my vinyl breakdown, vinyl collection video. Got a lot of good ones, so check it out. First album I got is Luther Vandross's second album, Forever, For Always, For Love, released in 1982 on Epic Records. Very dope album. Love this album. Singles albums known for are, excuse me, I have a little sore throat, so forgive me if my voice sounds a little hoarse. Bad Boy, Having a Party, and Since I Lost My Baby. Yeah, this is a very good album. Like, I like Luther Vandross's 80s output, especially from 81 to 86, 87, and shit like that. That's my favorite era of Luther. Um, he was nominated for a Grammy for Best R&B Vocal Performance with this album, but he lost to Marvin Gaye with Sexual Healing. So, other than that, very dope album. Must have if you're a fan of Luther. Then we got Red Fox with You Gotta Wash Your Ass, released in 1976, I believe. Let me give me 1 second. Yeah, 1975. Yeah. Again, you guys should know who Red Fox is. Sanford and Son, one of the greatest stand-up comedians and shit. Yeah, this is actually a very dope album, very raunchy, very funny and shit. Um, this album is actually out of print, I believe, so if you can find it, must have in your collection. Then I have Just Ice with the Desolate One, released in 1989. For those of you who don't know who Just Ice is, he is an MC from the Bronx and shit like that. He used to be like a former bouncer and shit, but then you can really say like he was one of the fathers of gangster rap and shit like that because like his stuff was very hardcore. It was very aggressive. Like even the way he rhymed was aggressive as hell and shit. So he dropped his first album, Back to the Old School, and that album I never heard those. I need to get myself into Just Ice a lot more, but he dropped Back to the Old School in '86, which a lot of people call it like an early hip hop classic. And that came out in Sleeping Bag Records, produced by Curtis Matronix, very dope producer. And that same year, he was charged with murder and shit like that. But he actually got away with murder and shit like that because like he was proven innocent. One of the first rappers, one of the first, I think one of the only rappers to actually get away with murder. And then he hooked up with Karis One. He dropped the Cool and Deadly album, which I did hear some of that album. Very good album, by the way. And then he dropped this album, the Desolate One in '89. Um, Singles. I don't think this album actually came out with singles because this was actually like a low key album. It's and shit. Um, whew. But a lot of die-hard Just Ice fans do not like this album because they felt like when he got with Karis One, he was losing his signature sound. But I kind of understand why he hooked up with Karis One because if you heard Karis One's beats, especially between 88, 89, it has like a very strong reggae influence. And in my opinion, I felt like Karis One was kind of like one of the godfathers of dancehall, if you ask me. But that's another story for a different day. Other than that, very good album. Definitely has that very New York sound, but it does have its flaws too. So I'm actually going to plan on doing a review on this once I break down some Boogie Down Production albums, maybe around late October, November, around that era. So stay tuned. And then we have Patrice Rushen with Straight from the Heart, released in 1982. Sorry about that. I had to go blow my nose a little bit, but yeah, for those of you, oh, I hate having a cold in the summertime. Oh my god. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah. Okay, so Patrice Rushen, very dope artist. I don't feel like she gets the credit she deserves, in my opinion. She is basically like a jazz pianist, but she crossed over to R&B and B and shit like that. And this is like one this album, and I think I heard Patrice, the '78 album Patrice, which is another good album as well. So I really need to get some more into more of her stuff. But straight from the heart, this album right here, though, very, very, very dope album. This has that unique mixture of jazz, pop, and R&B and shit like that. I love this album, and it's no surprise because this is actually her most successful album to date. But she kind of got some flack because a lot of people said feel like she was polishing jazz because you gotta remember back in like the late '70s, a lot of jazz was becoming like more affiliated with R&B and shit like that. So a lot of jazz artists were crossing over, but that's another story for a different day. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so singles albums known for are "Forget Me Nots," "Breakout," and "I Was Tired of Being Alone." "Forget Me Nots," that's actually her got her a Grammy. I think got her a Grammy and shit like that. If I'm not mistaken, either nominated or Grammy. But "Remind Me," that song "Remind Me" though, that you guys should know about that song because of the fact that a lot of hip hop is sampled from that. Everybody from the Far Side, I think DJ Jazzy Jeff sampled that. So yeah, very dope album, very dope song and shit like that. Very good album and shit. Patrice Rushen, straight from the heart. This album I think should still be in print though, but it's very hard to come by. Oh Lord, and then we got Aretha Franklin with Sparkle, released in 1978. Um, yeah, rest in peace to Aretha Franklin. I'm definitely gonna do her tribute, a very tribute for Aretha. I've just been so busy lately. I'm very behind on some reviews too, as usual, but just starting back school, trying to work on music as well. So yeah. So yeah, this is the Sparkle soundtrack. Very good movie, Sparkle. But in my opinion, I might be in a minority, but the 2012 movie, the remake, I actually like that better than the original because the characterization was better, direction was better. Not discrediting the original though, but one thing that movie does not have is a bomb ass soundtrack like this one, because she definitely hooked up with Curtis Mayfield. And if you guys know who Curtis Mayfield is, you guys should know he has some heat. And what's the album? I reviewed Superfly a while back ago on my channel, so the only singles I believe this album has are "Something He Can Feel." I think that was the only single, but let me double check because I could be wrong. Um, "Jump" and "Hooked on Your Love," but those are like less known singles. So yeah, very good album. I love this soundtrack. It was definitely good hearing Aretha and Curtis Mayfield together and shit because both of them were at their prime around this time. Yeah, definitely expect a review on this album. Rest in peace, Aretha Franklin and shit. Rest in peace. And then we have Luther Vandross again with "Give Me the Reason," which released in 1986. Um, this album right here is definitely this album, and I believe "The Night We Fell in Love. And I Fell in Love are my favorite Luther Vandross albums and shit like that. Singles albums known for are came up with a lot of singles. Stop to Love, Give Me the Reason, There's Nothing Better Than Love, and Anyone Who Had a Heart. But the two biggest singles were Give Me the Reason and Stop to Love. And So Amazing. You could say So Amazing was a single, but it was just, I think it was just like a Let's Know got popular over radio and shit like that. And shit like that. But yeah, Give Me the Reason. This is definitely a very dope album right here. Um, this album got him a lot of award noms, American Music Award noms, Grammy noms. I think Soul Train noms. I think I could be wrong on that, but yeah, very good album. It definitely shows the maturity in his voice and in his artistic direction. So, Luther Vandross, Give Me the Reason. And I might have to cut this video into two, but I hope not. Then I got this album I've been dying for, waiting for. David Bowie's Diamond Dogs, released in 1974 on RCA. I reviewed a lot of David Bowie albums like Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust. What's that one album? Aladdin Sane, Station Station. So you guys should know who David Bowie is. I know I took a little break from doing David Bowie because I really wanted to get some more of his albums, and this album came out in 74. This was a very interesting album, but singles albums known for are Rebel Rebel, Diamond Dogs, and in 1984. This was a very interesting album because of the fact that it was based on the George Orwell novel 1984, which definitely a dope book from what I've heard. I need to get my hands on that book. It represents like an apocalyptic world, and so David Bowie kind of used that as a way of, him saying goodbye to the glam rock era, in my opinion. Cause he retired as Ziggy Stardust character in '73 and shit, so he wanted a different direction. So yeah, singles albums known for are Rebel Rebel, Diamond Dogs in 1984. Very good album. I definitely need to re-listen to this album for my review on this album and shit. And I definitely am gonna get Young Americans sometime next month. Not too sure when. So, David Bowie, Diamond Dogs, 1974. Excuse me. Then we have Stevie Nicks' solo debut album, Belladonna, released in 1982. Yeah, no, 1981, excuse me. This album was, released right after they dropped that Tusk album, which is a very dope album. I don't care what no one says. And yeah, singles albums known for are Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Leather and Lace, Edge of 17, and After the Glitter Fades. And this album, very solid album, If you're a fan of Fleetwood Mac's Mirage album, you'll most definitely love this album. Because around this time, Fleetwood Mac, the Tusk album was a good album, don't get me wrong, in my opinion, but at that time, a lot of people wanted like a Rumors 2. They didn't like the experimentation that Lindsey Buckingham was going with that album, and this album was kind of like what somebody might consider like a breath of fresh air and shit like that. So yeah, very dope album and shit like that. Stevie Nicks, Belladonna. Then we have Billie Holiday with Lady in Satin, released in 1958. Yes, Lady in Satin, Billie Holiday. Everybody should know who Billie Holiday is. Definitely one of the greatest jazz singers ever. One of the most tragic musicians in my opinion. Um, this this is kind of like her last album that was released in her lifetime and shit like that. A lot of people, and I'm actually gonna cut this video possibly into two. maybe. A lot of people kind of bashed this album when it was released because of the fact that um her voice wasn't what it used to be and shit like that. Because you guys should know that she had problems with drugs all her career, and she was going through depression and stuff like that. So she contacted producer Irving Townsend and shit, and she wanted, and then they got to working with this album basically. What else about this album? Yeah, I definitely might definitely talk more about this album because I definitely want to like do some jazz reviews. Cause I feel like now I have quite enough jazz albums to maybe start like a jazz review section. But I recently heard this album actually a couple days ago when I first bought it. Boy, this album right here. This is the type of album you listen to on a Saturday night, kind of like this. You want nothing to do basically, and you just sitting there drinking some wine, smoking a cigar, if or cigarette, weed, whatever suits the boat. But yeah, Billie Holiday, Lady in Satin, 1958, very good dope album. And the last album I'm gonna talk about is Peter Tosh's "Legalize It," released in 1976. Um, Rest in peace, Peter Tosh. You guys know who he is and shit like that. He was one of the original members of the Wailers, Bob Marley and the Wailers and shit. Broke out into his solo career, and this was like his debut solo album that was released in Virgin in Columbia. Very good album right here, very dope album. This album was very controversial. Well, very controversial because the title track "Legalize It." You guys should know what that's referring to, marijuana and shit. So the song was actually banned in radio stations and shit. But over the years, a lot of people have called this album like a reggae classic, like one of the dope reggae albums of all time. If you're a fan of if you're definitely a fan of like late '70s reggae, Bob Marley's Exodus album, this might be the perfect album if you like that feel good kind of record and shit. Singles album. Let me see what singles this album has. I know this album has some singles. Now I think Legalize It is the only single, but Peter Tosh, Legalize It, 1976. And that's all the time I have. I'm gonna definitely do a part 2 later on tonight. Peace.